Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. Welcome to another DEX Show. This one live from Boston. I was going to be sort of the heart of Nexthink, maybe the brain of Nexthink, maybe. I don't know, the brain and heart. Between Lausanne and Boston, anyway, the two centers of Nexthink. And it means I'm here recording live with my main man, Tim Flower, in the same room. Hey, Tim, this is a pleasure.
Yeah, so we share the podcast, and now we share a microphone. So this is it's always cool to be in the same room.
Yeah, we're doing our Righteous Brothers act, where we both lean romantically in. And we were actually out with some Nexthinkers last night. Had a good night, and there was a few drinks were drunk. And the last thing I remember in terms of sort of group conversation, Tim, was all about which celebrity would you be if you were the opposite gender to yourself? Now, listeners may or may not be curious to know that I was quickly identified as Courtney Love, which I don't know. I mean, it surprised me.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it, but that might be interesting to listeners who haven't seen my face. Just picture a male Courtney Love, listeners. And there was a lot of debate, Tim, over which one yours was. Who did you get?
Yeah, I got a couple. First was there was a picture of Gwyneth Paltrow and one of her friends. So I got Gwyneth Paltrow for a while, and then somebody, I don't know how to take this one. Somebody landed on Betty White. So
who is Betty White? Who is she? Who is she?
Betty White is one of the Golden Girls. You have to. I'll let everybody Google that one. We'll see.
Somewhere between Gwyneth and Betty.
Yeah.
No doubt. And anyway, we've got it's a lovely occasion to be recording together, and we've got a special returning guest in order to help us celebrate this auspicious moment. She's CEO and transformation specialist at GlobalSway. She's an author and a genuine thought leader in the digital employee experience space. We always keep an eye on what she has to say. Welcome back to the DEX Show, Patti Blackstaffe. Hi, Patti. How are you doing?
Well, hello. I'm doing very well, thank you. Thanks for having me back. I'm really quite thrilled to be here.
Beautiful.
And, I was looking back on your last appearance, Patti, and, you have those moments where something makes you feel old, right? Something makes you personally feel old. Well, this made the show feel old because we were discussing the post-COVID workplace. Doesn't that feel at this point rather historical and quaint? Sort of, in a good way, I guess. We flowed on from that so far, all the way back on like episode 40 something. How have you been, Patti? You've been well?
Been very well. A lot has happened since that podcast. I've published a book. I've had. Yeah. I'm having lots of fun speaking and talking about digital leadership. So nothing like the fallout of post-pandemic fun to really highlight and rip open the underbelly of leadership.
Well said. Yes, absolutely. We are going to be kind of focusing on leadership. So let's start with a sort of a general table set question, Patti. How, in the broader sense that you care to address it, is digital change impacting the traditional leadership paradigm in business, and what are the implications to leaders here?
Well, I think the big one is that we have never before been in an environment with so much converging change, right? The converging forces on our businesses, whether it's economies, shareholder reputation, environment, climate, community, worker perception has changed. I think that networks, software, connections, interconnections, partnerships, board governance, revenue, changes in profits and how they're achieved, customer expectations, the entire business is being impacted that way. And I think another significant change in the last few years is people caught up, especially during that pandemic, people caught up with their ability to, move to the cloud and really it just accelerated everything, which changed our environments. Our entire businesses are run digitally now. And most people would say that, you lose your connection, you lose your business. It's a whole different world than the industrial era, right? It's certainly putting the pressure on leaders to learn how to lead in that kind of an environment, especially leading smart, specialized workers who understand how to work at the speed of business with agility and the environments around them and the interconnectedness with not just the business, but the vendors and the customers. And, we are really, really hyper connected, and we have a different type of worker that is kind of writing a new social contract, and leaders are a little bit befuddled, maybe, I guess is the word.
Yeah, so well said. And before we kind of drill into this theme a little more deeply, continue with the kind of broader context, because I think when looking at your book and at your sort of more recent reflections on the space, I think I saw the phrase digital workplace maturity, which I was really pleased to see, because it's something our leadership is talking about a great deal as the kind of backdrop for employee experience innovation, digital employee experience innovation more specifically. So interested in what that phrase or that concept means to you, and how does that concept or aspiration of a business at large really dovetail with those leadership insights you were just starting to share there?
Well, I think that when we talk about maturity, we talk about playing the long game, building organizational trust and learning how to lead high performers. If we're looking at digital workplace maturity, then we have to understand the people that are working in them. We're not talking about laborers in a field here. We're talking about very, very smart people with some pretty specialized skills. The maturity then means that we have to be much like a surfer riding a wave, right? You're riding a wave and you think about that. You have to balance and be able to adjust every time the wave adjusts, and every wave is different. And I think that's the environment we're doing business in right now. And as we do that, that means we have to truly define what we say we need as leaders. So let's look at our strategic outcomes. Ideally, every business, that's what we're about, right? We're about those strategic outcomes and the objectives that we're trying to meet, because that's why we're in business. But very few companies define their leadership principles against those business objectives, nor do they, set performance that way. I think that a strategic leadership plan has to be in line to look at the entire system as you're looking at your strategic business objectives. Okay, so if we're going to achieve this, and we want to achieve this, and the big ticket item right now is AI, the hype that is the hype. We're saying we want to be one thing, but the leaders aren't leading teams successfully enough to get there, right? We have to build a legitimate leader pipeline where leaders understand how to, deal with these high performance teams that are supposed to be agile at the speed of business. And then we need to invest in the kind of leaders that can manage today's environment. And most organizations aren't doing that. So maturity would be looking at it systemically, closing the leadership gaps, taking a look at how individuals lead, which is what we've done for 50 years, but then expanding that on what are the essentials necessary for leaders in today's environment, for the system, for the business objectives. What do those people look like? What are the characteristics we need?
So, Patti, IT is notorious for having gaps in how they operate. An IT practitioner will focus on the bits and bytes, right? I got this cool tool, I got this technology, now it's AI, there's so many things to dig into, and they almost focus on it so much, even to the detriment of their own career, right? They're focused on the here and now and this technology, and my career will evolve along with tech. They're also notorious for not connecting very well to the business that they support. They focus on the tech and not the business outcomes. And thirdly, they kind of disconnected even from their own leadership, right? I'm not in tune with what my leader is doing. I'm just going to continue to focus on this tech stuff, and all that stuff is management noise. How do you see the changes that you're describing and talking about at the leadership level? How do you see them either an ability to influence and affect those technology professionals and practitioners in the organization? How do you see that that gap being reduced in particularly in end user computing?
Well, we have to kind of peel away the onion, right? You need to peel away the onion and look at root cause. There are many causes, and changing leadership isn't going to fix everything in your
Right.
dysfunctional business. It's just not going to happen, but it is one component. So you're looking at people who have dealt with an outdated view of what they do. So people in IT are still being treated, they're supposed to support the entire business in a way that is adaptable and using new technology and managing change and all of these things. And yet they're still looked upon by the leadership as these guys in a basement corner managing desktops. You know, there is a paradigm shift that has to happen in business where the respect is two-way street. And these folks, when you look back on the disjointed efforts, inefficiency, fragmentation at the very top and through all the departments, the failure to hire digital leaders, the stifled innovation, they're trying to adapt. Oh, this new cool tech, I'd love to be able to apply this and adapt it to the organization, but no one's listening to me. So when you look at ITSM and ESM efforts where they're trying to bring other departments in and they're saying, hey, you know, we really, really want to be able to help you and we think we can, and they get shut down because they're viewed as these annoyance down in the basement, right? It creates an atmosphere where they don't feel like they have the conditions in place in order to succeed. So there's lots of gaps in training, there's hampered collaboration and communication, there's leaders who we're still in organizations. I can't even believe that it's 2024 and we still have micromanagers who are successful, right? Ineffective decision making, meaning my voice doesn't matter. You're making decisions and you never once asked the people in the know. So it's really easy to say, hey, these employees are the problem, but the employees aren't necessarily. This is a two-way street, right? And so I think we need to open up the door to learning what exactly we need to do to set the conditions in an organization in order for adaptability to be accepted and practiced. And then we need to really take a look at how individuals have been treated. I mean, you take a look, here's one small example. Let's look a little bit at organizational betrayal. We say we want one thing. We hire. We tell them we're going this direction. And the next new thing comes out, we let everybody go and we hire over there. We ask people, hey, we want you to really, you know, double down on working from home and keep us open during a pandemic. But then the next couple of years, all we hear is all of our problems belong to the employees and we want you all back in the office. They're not looking at data, they're not looking at feedback, and they're not hearing the voice. So I think we need to shift our paradigm on the leadership side. And that's what we talked about with the maturity, right? We need to shift our paradigm about what we say and what we do are real and they unite, and that we change the relationship between employee and organization because it's broken.
Yeah, and I think that one avenue there is to start focusing at the individual level. The organizational level is great, the career, the goals of the org, but talking specifically to the individual, whether they're a practitioner or a leader, I think is really important, because IT, the evolution of technology very often parallels the evolution of your career. So talking to that individual and helping them understand that as technology evolves, you need to as well. I worked with a lot of people early on in the mainframe days and the VAX VMS days, and many of them became dinosaurs because they didn't evolve with the new technology, and they found themselves in a place that was kind of limiting for their career. I'm curious what you see as technology evolves. What opportunities, I don't know if you can be specific, but what opportunities do you see open up for either an individual leader or an EUC practitioner in terms of career opportunity and acclaim? What are your thoughts about opportunity at the individual level?
I think that I'm going to tell a little story. I'm going to do a little backwards. When we strategically tried to say, how can we help organizations best? We started with the individual and then moved to, okay, now let's work with teams. Now let's work with the system. But what was interesting is we never, ever, ever got a chance to change or shift the paradigm at the executive level. And I think those go hand in hand. So the book that we just wrote is for one in a series of 4 books, 3 to come out soon. The first 3 were the first actual planned activities that we wanted to approach organizations with. And we suddenly realized as we were going into these organizations that everything we tried to do at the individual level was not supported at the executive level. So then we took a step back and said, we have to write a different book to start with because this starts first. So let's take a look at that. We're not upskilling people. We're not investing. And I think that the organization that invests in training, understands their skills, uses the CIFA Foundation skills matrix that really understands how to describe what they do, knows how to hire the right people with the right mindset, understands what that pipeline looks like and defines it, defines the principles necessary under which they work. I think if we're looking at that has to go hand in hand with as we approach the individuals. So now let's get to these individuals. I think that we have 5 different generations in our organizations right now, many of which are sharing the same values. They want to contribute, they want to be heard, and they want to be brought along as they go. And so they're missing some of the pieces individually that make them adaptable, how influence works both ways, the different kinds of how to set and get expectations. So those expectations, so these are part of what we believe are the foundations or the essentials for the individual. How to build a healthy environment themselves. And that might mean in a toxic environment, it might mean a little pocket of happiness, right? But still looking at what does the environment look like for me as an individual and for the people around me. Having the code of courage to be able to understand how to address conflict. We're living in a conflict epidemic. We've got so many people who believe disagreement is conflict, right? So we'll have somebody that we might call a dinosaur, but if we tap into the commonality of the values they have for the organization, team them up with the right people, give them the right training to be able to work together with all generations within a group in a way where everyone's heard. And I think that, again, goes to leadership, right? How are we doing that? How are we inviting the voice? One of the things we do is really clearly define within a group, hey, if the organization is going here, if we're going to have to adopt and adapt at speed, what does that look like for our team? What's our team agreement together? What is the mission we're under in order to try and accomplish this, right? So it's a twofold thing. It's looking at how does the system, the organization at the executive and board level really describe leaders we need? Because once that's defined, the leaders we don't want will fall away, right? I mean, we propagate what we tolerate. And so I think that we're looking at this neat shift right now because all the doors are open while we look at the potential and the peril of AI and how that's impacting all of our organizations, the tools we use, the experience we receive. And as we look at that, the doors are open for us to say, we can redefine this. We can now look at what does it mean to have collective intelligence? How do we define that human and non-human combination of who we are? I think we're in just the neatest space right now for experience to really become an explosion of smarts being able to be applied within the organization, utilizing the tools at hand. And to work with people, we need to really focus on what are you doing today and what do we want you to do tomorrow, and how are we going to bring you along with us? Because if we leave it to the individual, it won't happen. We need as an organization to define that.
Yeah, I think those leaders, those technology leaders really need to assist in the evolution of what it means to have an EUC career, right? The EUC career can, in many ways and for long stretches of time, feel like you're on a treadmill. My career is I work at the help desk. I take the exact same calls on Monday and on Tuesday and on Wednesday. I get up and do it again on Thursday, or I build PCs, or I install software. And you kind of start to get tunnel vision and lose track of that career. And to your point, if you don't break somebody out of that cycle as an IT leader and say, no, your career has these opportunities, we've got to be better as leaders to define what that career path looks like for folks to keep them kind of progressing in their careers, right?
Right. And I think that even leadership development is so broken right now.
Yeah.
You know, we're teaching leaders the same kind of leadership stuff we taught 50 years ago. To a point. I mean, we've introduced empathy, we've introduced vulnerability, okay. But we make a poor leadership investment saying we're going to count on the good nature of the individual to change, but we're not actually going to insist that that change is necessary in our organization. We're still going to tolerate outdated leadership styles. We are going to allow them to attend these theoretical training, but never show them how to apply it within the organization. We're lacking interpersonal skills because we're not teaching it anymore. It's not taught. And I think that the more technical we become and the more in our phones and texting and everything becomes that way, we as a society are losing those social skills, our ability to really collaborate. And so we've got all these incredible collaboration and experience tools that we can use, and we're not utilizing them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the gathering that we had last night, some of us were kind of comparing notes and saying that getting out with the team kind of felt like a bit of a high school reunion. And somebody made the comment that most of us didn't go to anything beyond our 10th year anniversary or 10th year high school reunion. And part of the reason was people are so connected on Facebook. They see their high school friends from 20, 30, 40 years ago. I don't want to go out. I already know what you had for breakfast yesterday. I don't need to go to my 20th and see everybody again. So in a way, social media is making us less social. And it's a really interesting aspect to think about in terms of technology.
Yeah, and I put, finger quotes in the air when we say connected, because are we? I made a commitment about 3 years ago that I was never going to say happy birthday on Facebook. I was going to notice it and then phone my friend.
Yeah.
And that changes the world. It does. It just completely changes the world. There are some things that we can do as individuals to really shift that. And as leaders, we're told, oh, we're not connected enough. We're missing each other. We're not in the same room. And we are missing those things. But no one's teaching leaders that most employees don't work that way. Most employees don't work collaboratively every day, all day long, right? They're working in bursts of collaboration. So we can plan those things as leaders. Like, what do we need? Are we going to do a 2-month cadence where we all get together? Are we going to do a 6-month cadence? What do we need? If it's project related, then it's got to be a little, more often. Are we interconnecting with other departments that way? When we plan a burst of collaboration, are we getting into a room with whiteboards with other members of the organization so that our interdependencies are understood? You think about onboarding alone, right? And the disconnect between HR and IT. And you take a look at, and offboarding, we won't even talk about that. But the whole idea of bringing people together doesn't have to be an all or nothing zero-sum game, right? We need to really teach leaders what collaboration looks like. There's lots we can do asynchronously, but yeah, we should probably plan some bursts of collaboration to get them together. We also need to understand if the organization is saying we have to move from here to here in the next 3 years, we need leaders to sit down with their teams and say, do you know what that means for you? You know, there's nothing worse than being involved in an ESM project where the network guy knows if I contribute to this, it means the end of my job, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
So leaders are typically really skilled at communication. It's part of the reason or part of the path that they took to get where they are. How do you, what guidance do you give to the technician, the practitioner who is really good at the bits and bytes, and it's rare to find somebody who's really good technically and a really good communicator. How do you give them some guidance to look at the opportunities to skill up on those communication skills and take advantage of the opportunity? If leaders are going to be communicating more and doing that kind of downward comm, how do you skill up your individual techies to take advantage of that and actually engage and use it for their career benefit?
Here's something IT is really bad at, and that is self-promotion.
Mm.
We're really, really bad at that. I have a checklist, and it's a 2-page checklist that we give to our clients that is all about communication. And it isn't one-on-one. It isn't about me being a good orator. It's about how do we share the value we give, the value we add to the organization. And there's lots of different ways. We always start them with the easy stuff. Like, let's do a little marketing campaign every time we have a win, right? This is easy. This isn't hard stuff, but you can work with marketing to do this. You have televisions in your head offices that you have screens that you can change on a dime for everyone. You have the ability to contribute to a newsletter, to put it into the organization in a what you didn't know or did you know kind of a way. The ability to send out, happy grams, little things like that. So we have this huge list. The second step we ask them to take is start a community of practice. So if you are the person in the know in IT and you have some really great things you'd like to share out, ask the organization if people in other departments would like to understand that community of practice, right? You have the ability then to start leading and slowly building up your competency and your ability to be able to communicate how they can better their world. And the biggest question you can ask, that hands down, how can what I do make a difference in making you successful? And then you just stop talking. And suddenly you're listening, writing it down, trying to make a difference, and you've just become a really good communicator in the organization.
Yeah.
You've maybe anticipated my question a little bit there, Patti, because it was all about the delivery of value and what value specifically means between contrasting the old model of expectations and deliverables with this emergent one. I mean, I wonder if you have, if you could unpack that notion of how we demonstrate value, how we measure value in this new emerging paradigm.
Well, one of the things we often do, especially, when you're talking about experience and support and service and the areas of IT that are doing their best, we've taken metrics and turned them into must-dos as opposed to informing decisions. So our metrics really should be about informing decisions. And we will focus on one. One client had ticket times were their be all and end all. And if we weren't doing ticket, and that went up to the executive, and they were firing and hiring people based on ticket times. But they weren't merging any of the other data together to really look at how experience is happening within the organization. They weren't using tools, right, that are supplied that understand sentiment and understand, what you're doing. Here's the goal. All your job is really is to ensure you're enabling other people to do theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at metrics, what matters? How do we help people do their jobs the very best we can and get them to those business objectives? And that goes throughout the whole organization then, because what we measure matters. And it speaks to performance. I can't tell you how many executives I've worked with who say, yeah, I'd really love to build a better organization, but that's not how I'm measured.
Right.
Right? And then when you look at the front lines, I'm going to change everything I do based on how I'm measured. So what you measure matters, and the experience people receive is so tightly tied to what you're measuring.
And of course, the backdrop to all this is an incredible influx of really unprecedented AI and automation capabilities coming into the experience space. I'm sure you've kept a close eye on this, Patti.
Absolutely.
What are your reflections on how on this influx so far, and how do you expect it to further influence the picture you're painting here?
I think we're going to experience an awful lot of excitement that is followed by an awful lot of pain, and then a reset. I think in 3 years we're going to see organizations saying, "Wow, okay, well, we're a little tired of AI hallucinating, and so we gave it a little too much autonomous, go ahead." And we're going to see other organizations that train their people to really utilize the tools in a way, oh my God, it's just glorious how they can be used. You think about the potential for what we can use AI for when we're on a call, and how it can summarize the call. It can put the notes in where one person might be really good at, another person might not be good at it. Now AI is able to create these summaries that are really quite specific and amazing to the call, which then leads to better personalization, which then leads to how we track patterns within the organization is really quite remarkable. So I think when we look at AI, and what I've seen at the onset of this is a whole bunch of, oh, we can replace all the humans. We really can't. It's not possible to replace all the humans. What we can do is create efficiency. So if we're creating efficiency by, say, 2 to 3 minutes per ticket, we've just, accumulatively created some really amazing time savers and productivity saves. We have to start tracking that. We need to understand what we're saving and what we're not saving. Air Canada recently had a case where they allowed their bot to be a little too conversational without some parameters. And it wound up in court, and the customer actually won because the AI bot delivered what it was supposed to deliver, make the customer happy. But make the customer happy went against the background policy of refunds, right? So we need to really understand the data. We need to have our data cleaned up. We need to segment our data. We need to have sensitive data labeled properly. We need to ensure that we're still meeting security and privacy regulations in so many different areas, right? From state to province to county to whatever that looks like, everyone's jumping on the governance bandwagon. And I think that our job as an organization is to look at what's safe, what's realistic, and start small. Let's start where we're at. Let's test this. Let's experiment. Let's have some fun with this.
Yeah, I heard a really interesting quote. I think it was at the Gartner conference last week. It really made it settled some nerves, I think. The quote was essentially AI, a person that uses AI will replace a person that doesn't use AI.
Well
It's not
said.
about AI removing people. It's about people leveraging the technology. You will be more valuable, and you will replace the people that don't use AI.
Well, and the thing is, it's the easiest technology to learn how to use if
Right.
it's applied properly by the organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
James Finister, who is, I listened to a webinar last week with him on the call, and he's an AI ethicist who said, now I'm paraphrasing, so sorry, James. If you have a broken leadership, if you have a broken culture, if you have a dysfunctional organization, AI will accentuate it way faster than you expect. And so I think that's get your house in order is really an important aspect of the adoption of AI within organizations. On the individual level, oh my gosh, you can have so much fun with this, so long as you're working within the parameters the organization has set, right?
I just went and had a look at what this AI bot had been telling Air Canada customers. It wasn't as salacious as I thought it might be. What's this AI bot been saying? So it was making big offers. Writing checks it couldn't cash for discounts, which is a bizarre and fascinating phenomenon in itself.
But the cases are rising, right?
Too intimate and familiar. I had no idea. I didn't know. But
the cases are rising, though, where we've seen articles come out of doctors who have used AI to try and have a conversation with their patient, but they dumped all their patient's data into AI on a model that was training on that data, and suddenly, breached privacy of someone's healthcare. And so we need to really think about how we're using it, and organizations need to really define the parameters and where they're getting their data from, where it's been trained, because we don't know. If we don't know, we shouldn't be jumping in.
Intriguing stuff. Intriguing conversation, Patti. Really delighted to have had you back on the show. Yeah. Tell the listeners a bit more about your book, and we'll include links to it, but you can also mention where they can find it if they are listening and can't be bothered to just check the show notes.
The book is called Upheaval, An Executive's Guide to Organizational Digital Leadership, and it's available on Amazon all over the world. You can find it, order it online from several bookstores because it's quite new. We haven't expanded to having it in a lot of bookstores at the moment. And TSO Shop also has it available there, and it's really just the start.
Fabulous. Well, it's been lovely to have you back on. Definitely love to speak to you again. We won't leave it quite so long this time, mate. We won't let another pandemic come and go before we speak again, Patti. It's been a pleasure to have you back on.
Thanks, Patti.
What a joy. Thanks for having me here.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how Nexthink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nexthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.